All right. So we're laughing about how I asked Dolores how she was, and she said, "I'm fine." Oh, no, you said I'm good. That's right.
I'm good. Yeah. Without even thinking. It's just like, oh, yeah, that's such a loaded question. I'm
It's
good.
just a reflex. Yeah, we're so conditioned. Yeah, fine. Everything's fine. My hair's on fire, but I'm fine. Fine.
Yeah.
So how are you really feeling?
Discombobulated. That's more of a true answer. Going back to that knee-jerk answer and that question, I spoke to a friend of mine who, she had just given me some sympathy and condolences as we were going through this, and I had an occasion to speak with her personally. And of course, the conversation always starts out with, "How are you?" And you know what? She handled it with such finesse. Is that I stumbled over the question, and I'm like, I don't know how to answer that question. We kind of laughed about it. And then our conversation went into something else because I really did have a piece of business with her. And then you know what she did? She brought it full circle. After I had lowered my defenses and my wall, then she asked me how I was. And I really took note of that. I was like, oh, wow, she is like incredibly gifted. And then I could talk to her about how I felt. So, God, where are those tears coming from? Anyway, yeah, I'm feeling a little. It's another shift, so I'm feeling a little discombobulated. Yeah.
Tell us about the shift. What shifted?
So, about maybe a little over a week ago, I was down in the kitchen, and I was home all by myself, and I was just being my usual self, and there was it was a voice, and it was kind of a mixture of, I'm tired of feeling sad, and the sadness is finished. And it was an actual feeling of the sadness lifted, like the sadness lifted. And it didn't mean that it almost feels like if there isn't the sadness, then it's happiness. And like I was gleeful and happy. I wasn't. I just wasn't sad like I had been. And
how did it feel when it lifted?
uh
Was it like a physical sensation?
maybe not physical, but definitely energetic. Like it was definitive. Like it was a relief. Like there was a dissipation of that, and I have had that feeling. I want to say many times, but at least several times before, of when and Sue, I don't even know if I have the words to describe this, is that out there on the street, they say, think good thoughts. What thoughts you think is what you manifest, and all that stuff that they try to teach you. And you know what? When I am thinking heavier thoughts, or experiencing heavier or lower vibration or denser kind of emotions, like I can't make myself not do that. I can't make myself not feel that. Maybe other people can, but like, I don't know if that's my superpower, and I kind of see it as my curse. But like when I'm feeling what I'm feeling, that like I can't talk myself out of it. I can't think myself out of it. And it sometimes kind of makes me feel like a failure, like, oh, everybody else has this perfect little mindset that, oh, that they can go meditate and then they come out and they're all happy and, rainbows and daisies and stuff. And Dolores is just dug deep in. And I kind of feel like that's where I should be. Like, that's where I am. So that's where I am. And it makes me, it kind of makes me feel like a failure that I can't get myself out of that. And I don't know. I think that there's a lot tangled up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing the angels want to say is that it's never helpful to pretend we don't feel what we feel, right? Our emotions are all there to serve a purpose. Now, we've talked about a couple of the emotions, or some of the emotions of programming, like shame and guilt, but all the other human emotions, sadness, anger, like we are intended to feel those things. That's why we have those emotions. You're not meant to lose somebody very near to you and feel nothing, right? We're meant to be sad at the loss of their physical presence in our lives. Now, we can be joyful that they're not suffering anymore, or we can feel relief that they've made it through to the other side. We can know that they're still with us, and yet we can still grieve the physical loss at the same time. And it's a both and, of course. And you and I have talked about the toxic positivity, right? When we just pretend that we're positive all the time because we're supposed to be positive all the time, we just end up with all those things. We're not actually allowing ourselves to feel stuck in our energy system. And so they pop up some other way. They come out at an inappropriate time. We have a tantrum in a work meeting, or they manifest, they fester long enough that they show up as physical symptoms. But emotions need to be felt and expressed in one way or another. They need to be moved through.
Well, and can I just underscore that the ultimate goal is not to be happy all the time. And that is with the depression that I struggled with for all of those years, that felt like that was what the ultimate goal of health was to be happy. And so I feel like I'm revisiting that, is that the goal is not to not be sad. The goal is to feel what you feel. Anything else to add to that? I mean, if we're going to have a goal of it, I mean, if
Yes.
we're living the way to serve us the highest. Yeah.
So it comes back to presence, right? So how can we be present for what feelings we're experiencing? And how can we be with our feelings in a way that's honoring of them and of ourselves, of our own experience, right? Most people have been taught to invalidate their own experience, often by very well-meaning parents, right? Like, you're at the park and your mom is watching you run around and play, and she's sitting on the bench and she's cold, so she makes you put your coat on. And you're like, but I'm not cold, I'm running around playing. But from a very young age, for very well-meaning reasons, often we're taught to invalidate what we know and what we feel and what we think and what our experience of life is. So by the time we're in adulthood, it's very hard to know what we're feeling and to know if it's okay to feel what we're feeling, because again, some feelings were not allowed in our family of origin, or there are certain feelings that are not appreciated in the workplace. Depends on the workplace, right? Some of them, anger is totally fine, but in others, anger is not allowed, just like families of origin. So, and sadness, same thing. Some places, what the workplace is about is a very sad thing. They're working on cures for child cancer, or whatever it may be. They're working on problems with the environment, and so sadness is considered a normal part of the day-to-day experience. Other workplaces, not acceptable. So it's not about some things are allowable to feel and some things are not, but it's about allowing ourselves to be present to what we're feeling in the moment. So right now, sadness is coming up. And then what do we do with that? So we talked about this the other day, but let's look at it from another perspective, which is something the angels have shared a lot lately, that our emotions are messengers. And I know you and I have talked about this. And so when they show up for a reason, to deliver a message, kind of like the Disney movie Inside Out, where the sadness and joy and disgust and other emotions lived in headquarters, which was inside the little girl's head, and they had the controls sometimes when it was their turn to take the controls. And so, very much like that, I love to think of each emotion as a little cartoon character that has its own personality, and they show up to deliver a message. So when sadness shows up, she has something really important to say. And if we don't try and play whack-a-mole with sadness or anxiety or whatever emotion we don't want to feel, get away, go away, I don't want to feel you. But if we actually say, hey, sadness, hey, anxiety, I know you're bringing me an important message. What is it that you want me to know? Then they're able to do what they came to do. You're able to gain some valuable insight. Like, for example, I know when I scroll through LinkedIn, my newsfeed sometimes, I'll feel a real strong jab of envy. And I'll be like, "Hey, envy, what's going on?" And it'll be that I just read something about somebody doing a really big thing, making a huge difference in the world, and envy saying, "I want to make a big difference in the world. I want to do big things." And I can say, "Thank you for reminding me of that." And I can reassure her we're doing our part. We're doing what we're doing. It may not look like what that other person is doing, but I appreciate you reminding me how much it matters to me to make a big difference and have an impact. And so envy can go back and play with the other emotions in the sandbox, is how I like to think of it, or sadness can go back after the message is delivered. And we come through this process that the angels have shared to have a really different relationship with our emotions, to view them as really loving aspects of ourselves. And so it's part of the what some people call shadow work, right? To welcome back those parts of ourselves that we've tried to repress or suppress or cut off. And so as we can love those emotions that we've tried to resist, it's a whole different inner experience. And you've been playing with this. So what's your experience been like?
Um, I think I'm a lot more patient and accepting of those emotions and being able to be aware and observe them. I'm still a novice or just unsure um, of honoring my emotions, but being around other people. Like that's still very difficult for me, and I kind of like to blame it on them that they can't handle my emotions. But the truth of the matter is that I'm still very shaky on experiencing those emotions um, and like you say, being able to express them in a way that is situation appropriate. Yeah. So I'm still very shaky on that.
Well, and that situation appropriate thing is really tricky wording too. It's because it's got some supposed tos and some shoulds in there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
So,
does.
and that's
Yeah.
why it's hard to figure out because it's about what other people think, and those other people they all think different things. They're not even
So
consistent. Same person is different at different moments of the day.
it's yeah, and it kind of, another thing that I was thinking about going through this grief process is that you really learn a lot about yourself. And well, you can. I mean, you're presented it in a very undeniable way. And you know, truth of the matter is that I have a hard time expressing or sharing my emotions even aside from this grief journey. I mean, even before it ever happened, is that, and I see that that's a very very strong program in me, is that when we weren't feeling um, well, like when we got embarrassed, when I got embarrassed as a kid, I would go hide in my room, and I find that I isolate myself, and we talked about that last time. Is that I just can't. I can't handle my emotions, and I can't handle being around you with your emotions, and you can't handle my emotions. So I'm just going to go in my bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so let's start by giving you permission to go in your bedroom, because there are times where it's just easier to go be with myself, right? If I'm feeling really triggered by whatever it is, especially if it's a trauma trigger, it's going to be in higher service to me to give myself some space and some time
Okay.
to feel into what's going on, to really understand, to see and honor and appreciate whatever emotion is showing up, whatever energy is going through me and what's happening, and to give myself the space and the permission to to be my own inner nurturer, right? To take good care of myself,
Okay.
first of all. And your inner warrior is helping with that. She is putting you in a safe space, let's say, a space where you feel comfortable being with whatever you're feeling.
Okay.
So let's just dissolve anything in the way of you knowing, being, receiving, and perceiving that it's okay to give yourself a timeout. It's okay to give yourself a sanctuary, sacred space, to be kind to yourself, to be with, to allow your inner family to interact and to come back into harmony. Your inner child is probably scared, terrified, even sad. Your inner warrior may be on high alert because sadness is happening here, terror is happening here. So giving her permission to create a safe space, giving your inner nurturer permission to go in and be with her, rather than wanting to take care of everybody else, which is what the inner nurturer does in dysfunction. First, she makes sure everybody else is okay, then she'll take care of you. So when you come from a family of origin where it didn't feel safe, not saying it's their fault, it just didn't feel safe to you to express all of the emotions in front of others, then it's natural for that to stay with you until you dissolve that subconscious programming. So let's also go ahead and start to dissolve that subconscious programming so that you have more choice. Not saying that now you're going to blurt out all your emotions everywhere you go to every single person you encounter, because that's not going to happen either. It's not an all or nothing, but giving you complete freedom to express, to feel, express, or to feel, notice what you're feeling, and choose if you're going to express or if you're going to excuse yourself, what you're going to do with how you're feeling. But without that knee jerk reaction of, you can't handle it, so I'm going to go out of here, without the sort of projection outward, and without the inner, I can't handle being around you when I'm like this. Pulling all of the story out of your space. The angels are gently dissolving all the story, all the programming, all the rules that you made for yourself as a little girl, and all the corollaries to all the rules. Ooh, that's moving a lot of energy. Good job. Allowing you complete freedom. There you go. The energy is continuing to move, so we're going to keep letting it move through, giving you freedom to feel all the emotions and giving you back your sovereignty, your choice, your freedom in the moment to decide if you're going to be with that emotion where you are in that moment, or if you're going to put yourself in a place that feels more comfortable. Pulling appropriate out of the conversation too. All of the ways that you've been taught what is and is not appropriate. Let's uncreate, delete, dissolve, and dissipate all of that programming. Allowing you to show up without all of the clutter, the subconscious clutter and the mental noise, so that you can be completely open to your divine guidance in the moment. And reiterating something that the angel said the other day, which is that you can receive your divine guidance no matter what you're feeling. There are some spiritual teachers who teach that you have to be in neutrality, or that you have to be in the higher frequency energies, joy or bliss, or, love, peace, in order to receive your divine guidance. The angels want to assure you that you can receive your divine guidance all of the time in any emotion. Now, some of them are so wrapped up in programming and shame and guilt, it's harder to hear. But you can definitely receive your guidance in sadness. You can definitely, and you can receive your guidance in any of these spaces. You can ask the angels for help no matter how you're feeling, and you can receive the answer.
Yeah.
Has that been your experience?
Um, Yes, because absolutely being in this grief journey and just really cocooned in the grief and the sadness. I mean, yes, there's been so much divine inspiration that's come through there, and but uh, I want to underscore the profoundness that just came through for me, that we have the choice to feel all those emotions. And then we have the choice of how we want to respond to them. And what I was trying to do, again, is jump from 0 to 100, or from this end of the spectrum to this end of the spectrum. Hiding is wrong, so I must never hide. It's the all or nothing program. And then as you're invoking the angels' blessings and healings and clearings on there, I go, oh yeah, I get everything from 0 to 100, not 0 or 100, and whatever, the ends of the continuum. And so sometimes I might go hide, and
Right.
sometimes I might not. And so, yes, being able to pull the word appropriate, because that all that is analogous to shame and guilt. If it's not appropriate, then you should be ashamed of that, or you're guilty of that. So yeah, getting rid of that, and it's just conscious choice, and being mindful and intentional with that conversation of what do I really need, and everything is okay.
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you mentioned that the sadness has lifted, and you mentioned being cocooned in the grief. So if the sadness has lifted, does that mean that it doesn't feel like grief anymore?
Um, it doesn't. And I got a very clear understanding, because the whole time this has been going on, I'm like, yeah, but what is grief? Like, really, give me a definition, give me a description. I don't know what that is. And it became very clear to me this morning as I was getting ready for our work together, is that if I was to describe grief, it would be a protective cocoon for us to really be protected. I mean, because that's what it felt like. So, when I say the sadness has lifted, it's the cocoon that I'm no longer in that cocoon, or I don't need to be. And so it doesn't mean that um, I don't know if I miss Miguel. I love him. I mean, that's all that's left, is that because I've struggled a little bit with that phrase, I miss you, because to me it implies that I want him back, and I don't. I don't want him to come back in physical form. I don't wish that he was back in physical form. Like, I'm okay with where he is and how he is, and I'm just left with, I love him. I don't hardly say I miss him. I love him. And so this whole grief thing, yeah, in hindsight, it just felt like such a protective cocoon. I remember when my mother passed away, I described it as a fog. And I think about, when the fog rolls in, everything is protected, kind of blurred, like there's no acuity of vision or feeling. Like it really did feel like that. And on that Saturday morning that I was down in the kitchen and I was told that the sadness was finished, um, that's what it felt like. I was like, oh, it's finished. It's gone. The fog has lifted.
That's such
And
a great analogy.
yeah, and so you asked if it was a physical thing. It almost was a physical thing. But it was an experiential thing. Like there wasn't really fog in my house, but it was just uh, I wasn't in that cocoon anymore.
And I think most of us can relate to that fog analogy because when you're in really dense fog, you can only see a few feet in front of you, right? And so you're no longer distracted or burdened by all those other things going on out in the world.
Yeah.
And that's such a great analogy for grief. Like the world becomes very small. You're not you're it's really hard to even believe that the rest of the world is going on with business as usual,
Right.
and you can't see it. You're separated from it. You're within this much smaller field. And and I love that you combined it with a cocoon analogy. So because grief is really messy, like when the caterpillar dissolves before it's a butterfly. It's this chrysalis kind of tender experience of before the event, you were different. And after the event, you will never be the same as you were before the event.
Yeah.
So it's very much like a caterpillar to butterfly kind of transition. Perfect analogies for this grieving process.
And when I was very much in the cocoon, um, like you kind of knew that real life, other people were going on with their life, and like it just didn't even matter to you. Like you were, I mean, you talk about being numb, but it kind of was a nice thing. It's kind of like when you go to the dentist, you're thankful that they numb you. And when you're in the grief, you're like, gosh, I'm so numb. And you wish you weren't, but uh, like it's a huge blessing that you are. And I think that what I'm really coming to the point of is um, being thankful for the grief because it's such a protection. And if we didn't fight against it, boy, it could really, really be such a um, beautiful experience, and not for the ulterior motive of healing, but that's what will happen. I mean, maybe that's the point. It's almost like a medically induced coma.
Interesting.
So that, I mean, all of these analogies are just popping in my head because that's what it felt like, is that you were numbed. You just didn't care about these things that you used to care about, and people would complain about things and you're just like going, wow, that just doesn't even matter to me anymore. And you're like, here, just take all of everything that I have. Like I don't need anything anymore. And here, just take it. You want that? You go ahead and have that. I don't want that. And yeah, such a different experience. I miss it, Sue. I miss I miss my cocoon.
Yeah. So the first thing the angels were saying was that it's very much like that country song by Tim McGraw, Live Like You Were Dying, where he talks about, he got diagnosed with, I think it was cancer or something. And so he went and did all the things that he didn't have time to do before. And it just changed him. He showed up differently for family and friends and kind of what you're talking about, that adjustment of priorities. And that we hope maybe we can hang on to some of that after the grief part of the journey.
Mhm.
But you also mentioned the word blanket. And the ancients were saying that they create this sort of memory quilt during the grieving process. So you know how to, like if you can picture a regular quilt, but imagine like each square on the quilt is a different memory or photo or so it wraps you in it's similar to what people describe who have a near death experience and they see the life, the moments in life that mattered. And it's so the angels are saying they provide something very much like that during the grieving process, where they wrap you in the memories, in the love, in the beauty, and in the opportunity for seeing and holding things differently. So much of what we worked through was the shoulda, woulda, couldas, the what ifs, the things that we use to torture ourselves. And that the angels say that's also a blessing, that those things are present so that we can choose not to live that way anymore. Not just in relation to that one particular person, but life as a whole. Imagine being able to go through the rest of your life without ever shoulda, woulda, couldaing on yourself. So you said you miss the cocoon and the quilt. Did it feel safer in there? Or how does it feel now that you're out of there?
Um, I feel like I'm naked, like, and everybody's acting normal, and I'm like, it's almost like time travel. You're like, what year is it? Like, did you miss me? Did you know I was gone? Like, who are you again? Like, it really, it is kind of discombobulating. Like, and I feel this kind of urgency or fear that I'm gonna go back to the way I used to be, and that I didn't come out of that cocoon changed enough that
Mm,
that I'm gonna it's almost like, am I gonna fall back into my old behaviors and habits that I I thought I had changed during
so
that cocoon?
totally rational fear. I mean, how many of us have gone to I don't know, an amazing seminar over a weekend and been like, "I'm totally different. I am never gonna be the same as I was." And then we go back into life, and 3 days later, we're back to everything the way we used to do. So, not an irrational fear. We've all experienced that.
Right.
And the angels are saying you did really deep work during this grief journey. So, if you should ever return to anything that you did before that you wish you would never return to, that you're gonna be at a higher level on the spiral. So they're reminding you that it's a spiral journey. There was there is no wasted effort, wasted energy, wasted time, in a divine life, and it's all a divine life. And you really dove in and chose to work through the grief. I mean, in a way that I've never used the phrase work through something with such depth and breadth of meaning before. You were working through every nuance of the grief. You were using your superpower of questions to understand what and why and how and what can you make of it. And so, in a way, I'm not surprised that you missed that phase because it was so fertile. It was so rich. It was so transformative. And it doesn't do the butterfly much good to stick around the cocoon after it's ready to fly. I was blessed with the opportunity to see some butterflies released into the wild the other day at the North Carolina Arboretum. They had been raised by scientists in the Arboretum, and so people could watch them, watch them coming out of their cocoons. And there were 4 that were ready to be released, and it was such a blessing to see them. One immediately flew away, just was like, "Okay, I'm out of here." And 2 of them stayed right on the flowers, like, hanging out by us, and 1 flew up into a tree to look at us, and we could see where it was from a distance. And it was really cool to see how everybody responds to that same pivotal moment differently. Like, everybody's grief journey is gonna be different, everybody's chrysalis experience or, you know, memory quilt from the angels experience is gonna be different, and we're all gonna come out of it transformed in a different way. And it can all be in such great service.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now that you're naked, now that now that you've pulled off the quilt and you're out of the chrysalis and you're ready to fly, little butterfly, how can we support you in moving through life with this new feeling of not being cocooned and blanketed?
Um, well, and you know, and it is kind of funny. You're the same but different, and that was a phrase that Hector and I would say so much to each other when we were married. It's like it's the same but different, and it is. It's I'm the same but I'm different, and I find that the worries and concerns that I had before the event, they are still there. But thank you for the reminder of the spiral, is that it's okay that they're still there. It just that the riddle has not been solved yet, and my evolution has not been completed, nor will it ever be completed, and that is so okay. And so those are questions that I yet have to, or I'm there are more answers waiting for those same questions. And
Yes.
wow, that just blew my mind. Um, I'm revisiting it, but it's because there's more answers to those questions. And it's not because, oh my gosh, Dolores, you're such a failure. You haven't figured that out yet. Because that's what it was feeling like. Oh, there are more answers to that same question.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, the
all of a
angels
sudden,
are
I'm excited to ask those questions again.
exactly, the angels are saying, you can study history. You study history a little bit in elementary school, and then you study it all the way through middle school and high school and college, and you may go on and get your PhD, and you may write books, and you may be studying history your entire life, and there's always more nuance, more connections, more breadth, more yummy deliciousness to be found in whatever it is that calls you forward. So absolutely, the questions that were your primary dominant questions before, it's not likely that you are going to come out and not be Dolores anymore. But the grief experience has burned away some of the parts that weren't authentically Dolores. So you've come out the same but different in that you're still Dolores, but you're way more Dolores than you
Yeah,
were before this experience.
yeah, yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah. So the support from the angels is just keep answering the same questions, because those are my questions, and they will just keep coming up. And so yes, that is the way that the angels support me in that is. And I guess that, I just give that to everybody, is that we're not tripping over the same things. We're just revisiting it from a higher level. So every time that we revisit something, it's not really even a revisit, it's visiting this. And we've done some previous work on it, but it's always with an expanded vision and understanding. So it's okay. Keep visiting the same topics. Here
There
we
it's
are.
it's no more wrong than wanting to vacation in Hawaii for the 10th time, right? Like, I
Right.
love Hawaii. I think I'm gonna go back. There are more things to do. I wanna do some of the same things again. I absolutely love it. It's delicious. It feeds my soul. And the question of why are things the way they are? Why did what am I here for? Like, these are questions that have so much richness behind them. And as we continue to evolve and become more, the answers continue to evolve and become more too.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna release that wrongness of asking the same question again. There's, if anything, there's a lot of rightness to that. Is that, yeah,
And the angels want to put it in other terms, just in case people are like, well, I don't know if I'm asking questions. If you have the same problems, if you have the same concerns or worries, if the same things evoke anxiety, use those opportunities to formulate really open-ended questions. What's happening here? I wonder why this is happening. I wonder why I continue to have similar experiences. What's really going on? What's underneath that? What's behind that? At general, broad questions really open you up to receive much broader guidance than why does she do that to me? Why is she wrong like that? Or why is he wrong? So just like, I seem to have the same sort of experience over and over again. I wonder what's happening. Or, I seem to be having the same kind of money problems over and over again, or whatever it may be, whatever your issue, or, whatever your chosen exploration at this phase of the journey is. And for many of you, it's the same one over and over at different stages of life, from different levels, different turns around the spiral. The more you can welcome that as an opportunity to deepen and broaden and see yourself as having evolved so much that it doesn't bother you the way it used to. The things that used to bother you tremendously are now much easier to deal with. And the questions can be richer and the answers can be richer. You're never going to get it done. You're never going to reach an end point. You're an eternal being on an eternal journey of evolving and becoming ever more. So the more you can soften into the, oh, that's awesome, the more you can enjoy life, even the really yucky stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So much goodness today. Yeah. So thank you for accepting me and my discombobulation and my naked butterfly wings.
I love it when you're discombobulated because we always find good stuff. And I love it when you're together because we always find good stuff. Yeah. So thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
We love you. Bye for now.
Bye.